You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today I have a special guest, a friend of mine, who has a lot to talk about and a lot of things for us to think about and to ponder. But more so, I think a lot of times we're not getting told everything that's happening. And when you know someone who's been in the front lines, who's experienced something that many of us haven't experienced, you want to give the opportunity for others to learn about this experience. When it comes to Live Your True Life Perspectives, I pride myself in this show for authentic content, for being honest and truthful, and opening the minds of many people, as well as being able to express different perspectives, but also to talk about things that actually affect a lot of people in this world. Joining me today, Dr. Shahaab Uddin, not only a friend of mine, but also an internal medicine doctor out of Chicago, who recently went to the Myanmar border of Bangladesh to help the refugee crisis that's actually taking place there right now. Dr. Shahaab, I'm so glad to have you on Live Your True Life Perspectives. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. I'm glad to talk about this. Thank you, Ashley, for this opportunity.
So let's talk about this. How did you first get there in the first place? Because I think a lot of people would say, so how did you end up getting there, and what was going on?
So Myanmar, Bangladesh is really pretty far from the United States. It's about a 24-hour journey. And I've just been hearing about what's been going on there in terms of the ethnic cleansing and genocide that's been taking place by the Myanmar government against the Rohingya population. The Rohingya population is a group that's really being persecuted there. They're an ethnic minority in Myanmar that very recently the violence has increased, and there's been a campaign to eradicate them from Myanmar. So I tried to look for different organizations that were going there, and I partnered with this group called Med Global that was sending physicians there as part of a mission to help in terms of being on the ground and treating common medical conditions. Okay,
so doctor, you really want to work for humanitarian efforts. You want to better our society. And so you've gone on different missions like this before.
Yes, absolutely. I've been to the Syrian refugee crisis in Greece and Jordan, helping out with the refugees there. I've also done some work in Kashmir as well as in Haiti after the earthquake.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me about, so you're heading out, you're taking off there to the Myanmar region. What did that trip take? How long did it take to get there, and what was the process of getting to the base camp or where you needed to be?
So the area that's where a majority of the refugees now is somewhat isolated. There's no really good airport to get there. But pretty much my trip took me from Chicago to Doha, Qatar, and then Qatar to Dhaka. And then I took a small plane to Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. Cox's Bazar is the name of a small city, coastal town, resort town, that's about 2 hours away from the biggest refugee camp. And the biggest refugee camp has about 750,000 people to 800,000 people there. So, yeah, it takes quite a bit of time to actually get to where the majority of the refugees are.
How many were traveling with you with Med Global on this particular trip?
So we were one of the first missions to go right when the conflict broke out or the violence had increased. So in my group, there's about 6 physicians.
Wow, okay. And do everybody have a specific specialty that they bring to the table?
Yeah, majority of the people were in some type of primary care, whether it was internal medicine, pediatrics, family medicine, were the main specialties there.
Okay. So tell me about it. You get there, you're at the refugee camp. I mean, was it startling? What were your first thoughts?
I had been watching videos and reading about it peripherally before I had went there, and I thought I had a perspective about what I was going to see there, but it was a lot worse than I had expected. The human element of actually interacting with those people who had just gone through this was really alarming that this was happening, and it was still really fresh for a lot of the people that were there. Women who had been raped, just prior to fleeing the country, people whose entire families had been killed in front of their eyes. One story that I really remember is a mother who said I looked like her son, who had drowned on the way to Bangladesh. So whenever she would see me, in the waiting room or whenever I would go there, she would just go into this weird panic. So it was a lot worse than I had seen in the news and through videos. It's a human catastrophe, what's going on there. And it's probably one of the worst places that I've been in terms of the on-the-ground situation, more due to the way it happened in such a sudden way, kind of has created a absolute catastrophe on the ground.
So where are most of these refugees fleeing from?
Okay. So Myanmar is the neighboring country from Bangladesh. So the majority of people who are coming there are Rohingya Muslims from the Rakhine State. It's one state that's on the coastal side of the country. So majority of the people that are coming from the Rakhine State. And at the end of October, or at the end of, I would say at the beginning of September, end of October, the Myanmar government went on a specific campaign to eradicate the area of these Rohingya Muslims. So they called it a clearance operation. And so it was this process of systematically removing all of those Rohingya Muslims from their land. And the only other place they could really go at that time was Bangladesh, which is a neighboring country to the west. The other opportunities are to Indonesia and Malaysia by boat, and there's been lots of people who've tried to take off by boat in whatever shape or form they could, and they've drowned.
So what is the reasoning behind these killings? You talk about ethnic cleansing, but why is this really happening? Is it because they want to eradicate a whole group of society?
So there's an extremist form of Buddhism that's kind of gotten involved with the military and the political leaders there. One of their leaders, the president of Burma, her name is Aung San Suu Kyi. She's also been involved with this ethnic cleansing. Their rationale at the time is that these people are not ethnic Myanmar people. They don't belong here. They shouldn't be here. Although historically they've been there for over 400, 500 years. Their forefathers come from there. But they say because of their religion, the way they look, their traditions, they're absolutely different. It's like saying that, somebody with a different culture, maybe from Florida, shouldn't be a part of the United States because they're different than someone from New York, kind of thing, although they share a lot of similarities.
And so you talked about this leader. What is her name again?
Aung San Suu Kyi.
And so this is a female leader that's deciding that this genocide is okay?
She hasn't actively tried to step in and stop the conflict. She's been very mum about it. It's unusual because she's actually won the Nobel Peace Prize not too long ago. And there was a time where she was heralded by the world as a sign of democracy and good values in the region. But once this ethnic genocide has started, she's been very quiet about it. Even though world leaders from the West and other parts of the world have pretty much started to say, hey, we need a more active involvement in trying to stop this.
Now, as far as the Myanmar people, I guess the ones that are trying to do the cleansing, what type of religion do they practice?
They're Buddhist.
They're Buddhist.
Yeah.
So there is an actual group of extreme Buddhists.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. Because I think, here in America, everybody thinks about Buddhists as being peaceful and giving and, letting go and accepting change is constant. And, many of us, I even have a Buddha head on my desk here in my studio. And so there's an extremist group that's open to this type of genocide.
Absolutely. It's kind of a unusual phenomenon in terms of our perception of the way Buddhism is. And I do think that ultimately they've perverted maybe whatever teachings that they were following and have somehow made themselves believe in this nationalist, extremist Buddhist fundamentalism that's killing so many people.
How many people have they killed so far?
So over the last 5 years, they have not allowed international monitors or anybody in on the ground to actually observe what's going on. So that was one of the big problems I had trying to get to the region, because I've been following this issue for the last 5 years. And as soon as the opportunity, if there was ever an opportunity to go there, I wanted to go. But there's never been an opportunity to actually go inside Myanmar. So the estimates are not exactly accurate. What the Myanmar government is saying is that there hasn't been anybody killed, but obviously there's been at least hundreds of thousands that have been killed. Displaced, we have better numbers of that because once they leave Myanmar, they can calculate how many people are there. So just basically looking at the numbers that have crossed over to Bangladesh, it's over 800,000. That have gone to Malaysia and Indonesia, it's about 400,000. So there's people just leaving in every different direction from the actual country. And then the number of people actually killed, it's hard to estimate. And there's some figures that are starting to come up via Amnesty based on like shallow graves that they've found here and there that are outside the country of people who've been killed and just dumped. But an exact number is hard to come up with.
So about 1,200,000 have been displaced. And so, when you were meeting with these people, what was the percentage of the amount of people that you spoke to that had watched a loved one be murdered in front of them?
It was pretty much everyone. Every single person I met had some sort of traumatic event that happened to them. And what was different was it was not very, there was no layers between them and that trauma. Like sometimes you ask people, how are you? And they don't give you an answer. But like when I really looked at them in the eye and I just said, how are you? How's it been being here? It would come out immediately. Like, my husband was murdered. My wife was raped. My son is missing. Like, so the majority of people there, they're not just fleeing from their homes. They're also suffering from this huge psychological trauma that has just took place.
Is anything being done to help these people psychologically? I mean, from my perspective, you have like a whole huge population of people who have full-on PTSD, who have dealt with some severe trauma and some horrible images that they will never forget. Is there anybody helping these people psychologically?
I think that once the immediacy of the situation calms down a little bit, that will be addressed, hopefully. I mean, right now it's really fresh. Like, people don't have a place to live, so a lot of the NGOs are working there on trying to get basic housing. Like they don't have water, so like they're trying to get clean water in there because there's so many waterborne illnesses that they're trying to prevent. Food is a big priority right now. I saw lots of children who are malnourished, like literally skin and bones. Like the pictures are frightening. To me, I felt like, even though I'm treating these medical conditions, the psychological impact was one of the highest. There is different organizations that are attempting to get on the ground, but definitely they're in sore need of specialists in this arena. I do think there's a huge need right there, and it hasn't been addressed. From what I saw, it definitely has not been addressed on a mass scale.
What is the food and water situation over there? So when you were there, where is the food coming from? How hard was it to get? What was that type of situation happening?
So the severity of the situation, how it kind of happened overnight, like 800,000 people crossed into a poor country overnight. Like Bangladesh even without a refugee crisis, is a poor country. And then you have 800,000 people who are fleeing with nothing but what's on their back into this country. It creates a huge strain on the system. So right now, like Red Cross, Red Crescent, Doctors Without Borders, there's some countries that are providing humanitarian aid. They're trying to bring in as much food as possible. There's in terms of like bags of rice, oil, all these things are being wholesale bought from the local region to bring in there. In terms of overall nutrition, I saw like the biggest population that's being affected by this food strain is children because they need a lot of nourishment to grow. So there was this organization called Action Against Hunger that is trying to document all the children there and bring them to a specialized clinic to give them the nutrients they need.
So I've watched some of your video footage, very compelling stuff, very compelling. When you turn on the camera and you were recording some of this, was it easier to look through the camera lens than it was to actually look at these people without the camera?
I mean, I think a lot of it, I was in the moment when I was with them, like I could see that we were having a human interaction. And when I was looking at them, but then at the same time, I had this thing that I need people to see what's going on here, so awareness can spread. I think there's a part of it, like when I saw the video, it kind of made it a little bit more real to me and a little bit more hard for me to digest, because in the moment I saw lots of traumatic things back to back. I kind of, your mind goes into this sort of numbness in the moment, although you're still there. Like, I mean, there's many times where I broke down. I would cry with whoever I was talking to, or, I'd give them a hug and it just hurt me. But when I watched the videos again, once I had a chance to like step out of that zone, it kind of hit me full speed as to the significance of what they had just gone through.
Well, I think being a doctor like you are, you've been in the ER, you've dealt with trauma, trauma after trauma after trauma, dealing with this patient, dealing with that patient. And I think it's kind of similar almost in nature, where you're kind of in the moment and it's, you got the adrenaline going and you're just trying to get to the other side to stabilize somebody. And I think it's kind of similar. Obviously, it's much more horrific what you were seeing. But to be in that situation where you're in the moment and you're just trying to do what you can to help these people.
Absolutely. No, I definitely felt that.
So what are some of the conversations that you had with some of these refugees?
I mean, after they would tell me whatever, story they had, it kind of surprised me how they were still very, very human in their moments. Like, they're like, where did you come from? What are you doing here? Can you meet here? Here's my wife, or here's my father, here's my mother, here's my son. They wanted me to meet their family. And just kind of, they really appreciated whatever I was doing there. And I mean, and definitely in this situation in particular, I don't think you really need to be a doctor to be there. I think you just really need to be human. And they appreciated that, because this whole process for them has been dehumanizing. No one's really looked at them as a valuable thing or anything that is of value. So, yeah, I mean, after they tell me their story, they kind of cry, they let it out. They want to know about me. And so that kind of really shocked me that, despite all these things, they're still keeping up with trying to be engaging with someone who came from somewhere else.
And it's the interaction. I think a lot of times when you haven't had interaction with someone else that's there and understands your plight, it can be very jarring. It can be very overwhelming, very isolating. And so for you to have a conversation, they're very sad and they're going through this pain and this PTSD and this trauma, but also there's somebody standing there that actually cares, and they care too, and they want to even know more about you.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are some of the most memorable experiences that you had on this trip?
I think one was this woman, or well, this was the one that like really hit me emotionally the most, and it still comes to my mind. Was I was standing at the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh, and the people were being registered from when they were coming in. They would give their thumbprint and they would write their name down. They'd be given like some water and maybe a bag of rice, and they'd be put on a truck to go to the refugee camp. And I was handing out some money that people had donated to me, because these people are coming into a new country. They have nothing but what's in their hand or on their back. These people literally ran. And I'd be giving out money to like the mothers of each group. They told me give it to the mother because you can see how many children she has, or if her husband's there, just give it to the mother. And so there's this girl like straddling between groups. Like she was trying to act like she was close to this group, then she was trying to act like she's next to the group behind her. And she was making eye contact with me. I was like, that's weird. Only the mother was making eye contact. The other kids are so exhausted, they're looking at the ground, they're looking up. But she was looking at me like she was by herself. And so it looked like she was with one group or another. But then I kind of observed her while she was getting registered, and she was kind of trying to act like she was in each group. So I got up, and like this panic came across my chest and my heart. And I started like screaming a little bit. I was like, who's with her? Who's with her? Who's she with? And the woman in front of her said, she's not with me. And then I asked the guy, the family behind her, I was like, who's with her? And they said, she's not with us either. So I took my translator and I went down to talk to her. I said, how did you get here? She said, I got in a boat with these people and I came here. And the Bangladeshi military officer who was also there told me she was an orphan. And I knew orphans exist, and we hear the word orphan, but like just to see it in such a dramatic way, like the way she was acting, trying to be a part of this group and that group, and being alone, absolutely alone at such a young age. She's maybe 4 or 5, and trying to, she knew that I was handing out money, and she wanted the money just because she knew she was alone, and she knew how she had to act to be. She had to act like she was with other people so no one would harm her. I mean, it was one of the most devastating feelings. I mean, like panic, like literally panic ran across my body, and I tried to do something, but I couldn't do anything. She got into the truck with all the other people, and she went to a refugee camp. So that really put the word orphan is such a word to be an orphan is such a difficult thing, especially in these circumstances.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So she just had to go to the refugee camp with the group. Do you think that they eventually will embrace her? Or?
I mean, I hope so. It's a tough situation. I've been reading a lot online about how there's so many orphans in this region where their mothers were killed or separated or something happened and they're just not with them. And there's a huge crisis going on how to deal with these people. They're very vulnerable. They're children. They have no one to look out for them. But there is no good follow-up on these people, because I asked around. I was like, what's going to happen to her? And they said, she'll go to the camp. We'll see what happens. So, yeah, it's tough.
So when it comes to the refugee camp itself, what are the facilities like? What is that environment like?
So one of just the visual imagery of it's very tough to see. It's such something you don't see every day. You see 800,000 people sitting in a jungle, like literally sitting in a jungle. Like if you imagine, for whatever reason, 800,000 people in the United States just being displaced to an open field with nothing around it, and they're just sitting there. So that's what you see for a good portion of the amount of people that are there. Now, over the last 4 to 8 weeks, I think the NGO community is literally working around the clock to build tents. So the basic structure you'll see is like a tent city. When you climb up and around and you walk, you start to see tents everywhere. And it goes deep. It goes really far deep into there. I think there's like 15, 20 kilometers of just tents. Some of them are made with bamboo. some of the people that I was there with from or that I met there, these South Africans, literally private citizens with no NGO who just felt a pain for those people, were out there going to the market and buying, like a tarp type material to put on top of these houses. And I saw them giving those out. So they would buy them in the thousands, 5,000, 10,000, and literally just start handing those out. And so you see, like, there's no real good organizational system at this time to get things in there.
Wow. So it's basically just a field, and it's kind of a free-for-all. Wow.
Yeah, the Bangladeshi army has been doing a good job of trying to create like a grid work of like neighborhoods and resources. Like, okay, they're like Red Crescent, Red Cross is here at this corner. They're giving out rice for this amount of time, or whatever other NGO is there. They're on the ground, like from like in this corner, so you can get some resources there, whether it's rice, oil, soap. Soap is a big commodity there. So all these things.
So let me ask you, when you were there, and this was obviously a very profound experience, did you feel like you were able to help as much as you could, or did you feel like your hands were tied to some degree?
I mean, I think I make sure I think cynicism can sink in at a certain level, because I know my Tylenol and ibuprofen and what other medications I give will not change the overall fate of a lot of people, or it may not change the conditions in a significant way. But at the same time, as a human being, as a doctor, as a human, I go as a messenger of hope that life is worth living. People care about you. You have to get out of this current predicament, and you'll live to see another day. And so, like, I try to emit that kind of positive vibes through me, and hopefully they can sense that, that's what I'm trying to do. But no, I definitely feel cynical at times, because I do feel my hands are tied. Like, there's not a huge amount of change that I can bring, but as one person on this planet, I will do what I can. And hopefully, if I could give one person some hope or a smile, making eye contact with them, I think that is enough for me, in a very small way. But I think I have to kind of think that,
You and I have had conversations, prior to right now. I remember you were talking about it. Did you give one of the refugees your watch?
Yeah. Another one of the moments that really is etched in my memory is from that same place. I was sitting at the border and, handing out this money. And there was this guy, he had like this log on his back, and on both sides he had 2 buckets filled with the possessions that he thought he should bring with him. And his family was behind him, his wife and like a few kids. But in his eyes, I've never seen so much pain. Never seen so much pain. And, when he passed me, he just kind of moved on. But I just stood up and I gave him a hug, and he just broke down. He broke down crying for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to give him. I wanted to give him anything I could, and I didn't have anything to give him. So I gave him my watch, and it was just like, I didn't know what to do, and I'm happy I had that opportunity. I'm glad that God put me in that moment, that I could at least, I don't know if it did anything, but I wanted him to know that he meant something to me. And that's all I could come up with.
I think it's kind of profound, though, if you think about it. If you step back in that situation, like you were saying earlier, that you wanted them to get that vibe from you, that positive vibe, that, that you care, that this too, even though it's horrific, will pass and that life is worth living. And I think symbolically, by giving him your watch, you were letting him know, there is more time and this too shall pass. And I care about you. And I think that was pretty profound.
Mm. Yeah, no, I like that.
I think that was really deep. Did you make some really good friends or connections while you were there?
Yeah, one of the good things that came out of it, also on the dark side of seeing humans in this kind of situation and the times we live in, I saw a lot of private citizens, private individuals, just people with a pain for them or a concern for their overall well-being on the ground. Like, I met a lot of people from South Africa, United Kingdom, China, Indonesia, Malaysia. People were just very much concerned and just had to be there. They didn't have a mission, they didn't have like an organization, they were just there. And talking with them, I met a lot of those people on the ground. I really thought what they were doing was really helping on a mass scale. Like one of the groups from South Africa that I'm still in touch with, they're building toilets, showers, wells for people to get drinking water, schools, the basic infrastructure, not the curriculum. But those connections I really thought were beneficial, and still in touch with them through WhatsApp and messaging. And so I'm still working on coordinating those projects there.
Do you see yourself going back?
I do. I'm trying to coordinate with my work schedule and everything a way to go back in January. There's some projects that we had began in just now since I've left. They started then. I got a lot of contributions from people and donations for this cause. So I've been giving that money there, and they've already started those projects. And I get WhatsApp messages or emails that tell me the process and the progress. So if I go back in January, hopefully I'll be able to see some of those projects that are completed and some of the newer projects that are going to take off.
Do you think that this violence will ever end over there?
I think politically right now, it seems like there's enough pressure for them to stop. I think their agenda was to cleanse systematically a whole religion and ethnic group, and they've been successful with no one really doing much about it. And they've almost cleared a majority of the Rohingyas from the land. So there might be no one left to kill anymore.
Wow. That's pretty profound.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, we've known each other for a while, and I'm always impressed with, the projects you're working on. Has this been something since you were a child? Have you always been just, the desire and the drive to help people that might not be able to help themselves?
I think it slowly took me some understanding of my own faith as to what my mission in life was supposed to be. I think as a Muslim, it's part of the faith. I think it's kind of injected into the faith in different ways, and to give life to your faith and not kind of just do the ritualistic things as in terms of prayer or charity. These things are all like mandatory in our religion, but there's a strong emphasis on giving life to your prayers. So I don't think those ritualistic things are enough to say that your heart is sound, that you're contributing to society. That's my perspective on religion. I think sometimes we do things because they just make us feel good, and you can use religion as a coping strategy or a way to look at the world. But I think the way you impact the world is by doing your best to help your fellow man in need.
I agree with that. When you were a young boy, did you think that you were going to be a doctor?
I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to be in. I was always interested in the happenings that were going on in the world and how to see how would I fit in that, and whether it would be through politics or medicine. in terms of what would be my life goal. And I think one saying that really struck with me, a Muslim saying, is that one if you can save one life, it's as if you saved all of humanity. And that's something that really impacted me early in my life, to kind of say, okay, maybe I could be like a human rights attorney or lawyer. I could, save millions of people by bringing legislation or laws or bring light to certain people who are in struggle and need. But growing up in South Bend, Indiana, I felt as though if I was a doctor, and we don't do this on a daily basis, not one doctor saves a life, it's a team, but I felt as though that kind of spoke to me in terms of, okay, do your best to achieve this goal of trying to save one life.
That's pretty profound. I agree with you on that too. I think we're all connected. I mean, we're all one. We're all connected. It's all from the same source. So, it makes sense. And when you're saving someone else, I mean, it's kind of like saving yourself to some degree.
Absolutely. I think these experiences are just as enriching for the individual who goes there as it is for the people who are there. I mean, there's so much I take away from these kind of trips. Not just gratitude, but just so much more. You see yourself in the grand spectrum of human existence, and it gives you a lot to be thankful for and a lot to ponder, and kind of also invigorates you to make positive steps in your own life.
After this experience, and obviously you've had other profound experiences as well, I know that when you get home and you kind of have a little bit of downtime and try to get back into society, I guess, how do you do that?
I mean, it is challenging. I think, the hashtag first world problems thing, it definitely comes at you quick when you come back, oh, my Wi-Fi is not working, or your friend wants to talk about like the best cookies in Chicago or like the best burger you can have. And you want to be normal, you want to be cool, but there's a part of you that's seen the raw realities of the way the world can be. And so trying to reconcile both of those realities is tough. But, one of my colleagues or someone that I went on these trips with kind of told me this in terms of getting back. Like if I say, hey, somebody's hungry in Somalia right now, dying of starvation, that doesn't change that I'm like still hungry before lunch. You still have to eat food, right? I mean, that's our reality. So trying to, just kind of remember where I am, but still carry my experiences with me and trying to bring them with me to the people that I see. Some people, they don't want to hear something that is that heavy at 1:00 in the afternoon. So some of it you just have to keep within yourself. At least that's the way I think, and seek opportunities to where people really want to care about that.
I agree with you. I mean, being brought up the way I was with the condition I had, I never knew if I was going to be here tomorrow. And so the way I saw life was totally different from what most people see it. The way you see life is very different as well. And I think that when we have these experiences and these life changes and these life-altering situations, whether they're a health condition or, giving back with medical need, in a country where people are fleeing, an area where people are being murdered and raped, I think you go within yourself. I think your life becomes more meaningful to some degree. But I do agree with you. You have to have that correct moderation, between caring and giving and being there, and also taking care of yourself, because I think you can get very overwhelmed by the situation, like you were saying about the child, starving in Somalia. Yeah, that's very overwhelming. But if we were to starve ourselves because we can't eat because we're so depressed, how is that going to do any good when we're the ones that are trying to help?
Absolutely.
If you could give, our listeners some advice on maybe if they're wondering, what can I do? How can I do something that, changes the world as we know it in a positive way? No matter if it's for one person or for 1,000 people, what is some advice that you would give the listeners on how to find that or how to make that a reality?
I think it seems very simple, but be human. I think we all have this common imprint from wherever you think we came from to want to do something good. And it doesn't have to be the Rohingya and Muslim people. It could be for the environment. It could be for the ozone. It could be for dogs. It could be for cats. It could be whatever calls you to your humanity. Sit with that feeling where you feel as though something is not being done right. It could be Black Lives Matter. It could be domestic violence. But that feeling you get when you see somebody suffering or something or some animal or, the environment, harness that feeling, harness that compassion, grow it, put fertilizer on it, put water on it, and try to see why that makes you feel that way. And I think it will help you find your own ways to help that cause. I would love for everybody to care about this Rohingya cause. I think this is a cause for all of humanity. We all memorialize human history. Similarly, we all have these catastrophic events in history that we should all learn from, like the Holocaust. But on a day-to-day basis, I think we're being inundated with a lot of information from around the world. There's always a hurricane, an earthquake, unfortunately, wars, and we don't have an opportunity to really reflect on our own existence. But if you do find that moment in the day or whenever where you're connecting with some sort of pain or something just doesn't sit well with you, you don't like to see people treated that way, or you don't like to see dogs treated that way, or the ozone, or people polluted, whatever connects you to your humanity, sit with that feeling, harness that, put it in a bottle, and use it to bring positive change. And slowly you will be able to harness that feeling on a more consistent basis. And I think you'll see that whatever that cause is, it does help humanity at large, because most people will not want to do whatever is hurting you.
That's profound. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I agree. It's whatever connects you. Like you were saying. If it's a dog, if it's a cat, if it's elderly, if it's whatever it is. Just doing it, because it really does. It does speak to your heart, and it really does add to your quality of life, and it does. It's the reason why we're here, is to do the right thing. It's the reason why we're here to help other people. The reason why we're here is to be authentically real and happy and authentic and true and all that within our own skin, and be able to find the love within ourselves, that unconditional love, and be able to unconditionally love other people and really help them when they're in need. I'd love to have you come back on the show sometime.
Definitely. I would love to be here. Thanks for this great conversation.
I'd like to have you back on. I'm sure you'll be going on another mission here pretty soon. I know you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I'd like to have you back on, because this is the way we get our news now. This is the way we get to understand what's going on, because it takes people to be on the front lines to tell us what's really going on.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough in this day and age. There's so much going on to really see, how much we can contribute here and there, but trying to make those positive steps forward at the same time.
Well, I really commend you, and I appreciate for all the work you're doing to better our humanity and to help humanity. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and helping others, be able to look within themselves and find that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very powerful, amazing interview with a friend and an excellent doctor, and I look forward to having him back on. And I think this is some valuable information. I think we're at this point in our lives right now where, God, it's just overwhelming with the news and everything that's happening. It's just so much. but we've got to slow it down and figure out where we can contribute the most good and how to do it. And I know all of you, everybody that listens to this show is a powerful, amazingly powerful spirit, amazingly powerful soul, an amazing, powerful human that can do anything that they put their mind to and their heart to. And so at this time, begin to ask yourself, where do I want to contribute? What matters to me? Who can I help? And what connects to my heart and my soul? And that is the question. And you will have the answer if you allow yourself to answer freely. Because you already know all this. I'm already reminding you of the things that you know. It's nice to have a happy and healthy reminder, right? So now it's time. It's time because there is belief. You are valuable and you are good enough. And now other people would really appreciate you helping them, because that's why we're here on this planet. And I think you already know that. Until next time, remember, you're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're loving, and don't forget to continue to live your true life. Perspectives with Ashley Burgess will be back this time. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.